All right, good afternoon, everyone, as everybody's rolling into the Zoom room here. Welcome to our lunchtime Build Back Better Together economy team meeting. You are certainly free to eat and participate at the same time. All right, looks like we've got just about everybody popped in here, and Lena's hope keep admitting people as we come on here. You all, like most of us, feel like we just roll from one of these calls to the next, so sometimes you have to get up and stretch in between. Well, welcome. I'm Mary Ellen Weider-Wohl, the Chief of Louisville Forward. Thrilled to be back with you. I miss seeing people in person, but at least we have this setting. And we've got a great crew here today and a full agenda. But before we roll into the updates and then the biggest part of the agenda, I wanted to also welcome my B3T co-chair, Kendall Boyd, Louisville Metro Government's Chief Equity Officer, is with us today. Kendall, did you want to say a quick hello as well?
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, I should say. Just glad to be here. Thanks for the invite. I'm excited to hear about the great work that you all are doing with your group. So thank you so much.
Thanks for joining in. And he and others are working pretty closely with the health and safety team, and they've got a big meeting this Friday. So anybody who wants to join into that as well, that information will be online, or you can get it from Lena also. All right, well, since the last time we were together in this setting, there has been a lot of work going on in the background. And so we're going to go at the top of the agenda here through some updates on that. Obviously, one of the areas we've identified as a team that's most important for our efforts is in the small business space. How do we create a richer, deeper small business ecosystem? So I'm going to throw the virtual mic over to Christina Shadle from the Louisville Urban League to give us a quick update.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. So the small business team, if you remember from the last conversation, we met and had a deep dive session with many of those on the call, really looking at the barriers in the small business space. We were looking at it from a weakness orientation so that we can understand what needs to happen in order to improve going forward. And then had a specific focus within that in terms of Black businesses. And so in that conversation, a couple of things came out, just really individuals sharing their experience in the lending space, in looking for technical assistance, looking for mentoring, those sorts of things. We talked about some of the things that have held people back, things as basic as just lack of awareness, some real deep-seated trust issues that have to be overcome. Sometimes just some gaps in terms of paperwork and things like that are requested when supports are available, and making sure that those gaps can be filled so that people can get from where they are to where assistance is being offered. So with that in mind, there were a couple of suggestions that came from that group that we're moving forward with that really are around focusing on providing funding specifically for Black businesses, also looking at elevating the profile of those entities. And so what we're really looking to do is highlight a couple of initiatives that are out in the community that are really Black-led and coming from sort of community up. And so one of those I think we're going to hear about in a little bit is Tanika Bryant's work with the Buy Black Lou portal and the Black Business Association, and then also the work of the Path Forward, and specifically around the establishment of a Black Business Fund. And that work is moving forward. We have identified a host agency for that. And so there are positive steps that are going to be coming, hopefully announcements here relatively soon in that effort. And then again, Tanika will share some of the exciting updates on her side. But so both of those are around, essentially creating some alternative structures and specific focus towards Black businesses, and then asking others in the community to fold into that work. And so there was a conversation with Bingham Fellows, for example, about work that they're undertaking and ways that they can be supportive of the Path Forwards Fund and some other similar initiatives like that, so that we can really look at not only creating the outcomes, but appreciating that the process, and particularly a process that allows Black-led initiatives to be supported, lifted up, and then other organizations sort of folding into that work. So that's essentially the work going forward, and also a bit of a paradigm shift in terms of how it is undertaken. So I'll leave it at that just for the sake of time.
Thank you, Christina, and thanks to everyone who's been involved in that small business work. We have a amazing number of small business resource providers in this community. And if anyone on this call today wants to get more involved in anything you've just heard Christina talk about, please let us know. There's obviously a lot to do, and so we can certainly find a way to fit in. All right, we are going to now segue over to Tanika Bryant and her Buy Black Glue work, and Rebecca Flyshaker also may throw into this conversation as well. Rebecca, did you want to introduce where we are with Tanika and then throw the mic?
Sure. If Tanika's okay with that, she surely doesn't need me to introduce her, but we are honored to be working with Tanika closely in a couple different facets with her Black Business Association. Metro has gone into a grant agreement with that, and that is another body that will help small businesses find the resources they need, be connected to other small business associations, as well as the resource providers, so that businesses are connected to who they need when they need it. And that's super important to have yet another arm reaching out into the community to reach businesses who may not know where to go when they need these resources. I've also been lucky enough to be working with Tanika on her building her portal, the Buy Black Glue portal. She did present and walk us through it, some co-chairs last 2 weeks ago, I think, and still working on helping the technical side of it, as well as how it works to the front facer, the front user. So continuing to work with her on that. She is wearing probably 10 hats every day. And the work she's doing is so great. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tanika, if she's here.
I see her name and I see it's on mute. I wonder if she's got an internet connection issue.
Oh.
Tanika, there you are.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Tanika, if you're there, you can go right on ahead. The floor is yours. All right, I think Tanika may be having some connection issues, and boy, can we all relate to that. And they almost always happen at the worst possible time, right? All right, well, Tanika, we'll come back to you. We'll go ahead with our next update and then come back to try to catch you after that. Next on our update list is a quick update from Conrad Daniels and Sarah DeVasher Wisdom on some of the overlapping work. That's one of the things that we quickly understood as we got into some of our different verticals here about how we could connect medium and large size companies with new resources and help really not only to connect with new businesses, but also how to really embed equity into our medium and large size businesses. And that's also a lot of the work of GLI's Business Council to End Racism. So Conrad, Sarah, throwing it to you.
Sure. Can everyone hear me? All right. Conrad Daniels with HJI Supply Chain Solutions. Glad to be here. Thank you all for joining. I just wanted to give you just some quick updates on our Business Council to End Racism efforts over at GLI. Really excited that we have a new hire, our GLI Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. It'll be effective October 19th and is going to really help with driving and leading all of these efforts that's coming out of it. We've also posted a position as for a GLI Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Business Support Manager. However, the director is going to be overseeing the strategies of the Business Council to End Racism, creation of a minority business accelerator, and some of the key talent strategies to build a more inclusive environment that's hopefully going to come out of all this. Another update is with the actual GLI's Minority Board Minority Business Accelerator Program. So a support network to aid minority-owned businesses and provide resources to really help scale operations, and reach new customers and maximize their potential. We're seeking to recruit strategic partners and providers with the experience and expertise to contribute towards these efforts. We've got several investors that have agreed to offer some pro bono, some discounted contingency fee-based services for major business costs like accounting, marketing, legal work, all the essentials that can create a successful business. Several banks have volunteered to help with access to capital. So the accelerator will include connections with the small business resources for technical assistance. Hopefully we can get a mentorship program that will be announced here very soon, and getting some strategic connections between minority-owned businesses are underway upon request, and GLI will begin making proactive outreach and marketing to minority-owned businesses in November. Very exciting. You know, we had Cincinnati come in and kind of give us an idea of how they're doing theirs. So, you know, if you want to get plugged in, learn more about it, or offer some support, please reach out to GLI. Probably I'm going to go ahead and say Rebecca Wood and she can kind of steer you on how you can connect and be a part of that. The next thing we're working on is how do we finalize a partnership to develop some type of transparency indexing tools and resources by industry to really equip business in the greater Louisville region with the ability to measure and develop plans to achieve more equity and diversity within organizations. So this is going to include some best practices, recommended steps, accountability measures for businesses to utilize and help identify areas in need of improvement as it relates to internal policies, practices, and procedures. We're going to have some roundtables with CEOs here, hopefully, you know, in the next few months to really hone in and kind of understand what that framework looks like. Looking forward to that. And I know we've been at a point where we've been doing a lot of discussion, a lot of topics, and it's really exciting to see it all come about. Of course, nothing can be fast enough, but we are moving towards it. Excited to announce that Glide West Louisville is completely sold out. So thank you, Louisville, for making that happen. Part of GLI's work is to overcome the racism, includes helping business leaders learn more about the West End, its history, its rich history, including the state of housing, education, workforce, healthcare, economic development, in addition, the impacts of the criminal justice system and law enforcement. So we're really looking forward to people on that trip just learning and getting engaged and developing actionable items that the business community can do to support West Louisville. The main themes of each Glide session has a connection with GLI's Business Council to End Racism, in addition to the Now Louisville Strategic Plan. And last but not least, just be on the lookout for a timeline from the Business Council to End Racism. I know a lot of us have expectations, and we're doing some wonderful things that's coming out of this group. There are some bold goals and outcomes, and I think as this continues to move forward and we gain traction and momentum, managing expectations with, okay, now that we've got this director on board, here's what we can see as a city in the next foreseeable future, to really kind of level set everyone. So I think that's everything. Sarah, if not, jump in. If so, then I appreciate you guys' time.
No, I think you covered everything incredibly well, Conrad. So thank you so much for your leadership in this effort. I believe that the work that we're doing will address a lot of what Eric is going to talk about. So it's a natural transition. So again, appreciate your leadership, Conrad, and thank you for taking that on.
And it's gratifying to see how many organizations are now coming to the table and really you know, picking up different pieces of what needs to be done. That was always the vision for how the Build Back Better Together platform could be most effective. And so thank you to GLI and all the business leaders who are participating in that and really making this such a broad community platform for change. I'm going to try one more time to see if we can get Tanika on the line. She's having problems. I know she's tried to dial back in. I'm going to give this one more shot. Tanika, can you hear us? We'll wait a few seconds to see if you can get your audio through. All right. Well, we'll try to come back later. And if not, we can certainly have an update at our next time together. And I see you're off mute, Tanika. Is it possible you can hear us now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry. I'm on the computer and I'm on my phone. I had to call in and, it's just all over the place. So thank you for having me. I won't waste much of your time, but just to give you an update on Buy Black Lou and the Black Business Association. So last year, I started the Buy Black initiative in Louisville after seeing some information stating the lack of generational wealth in the Black community, such as it's going to take over 250 years to close the racial wealth gap, and among some other things. So I decided to be intentional about where I was spending my dollars, and also letting the community know of what all is out there as far as Black-owned businesses. And to my surprise, it just kind of took off. So as we began to grow, I started doing market research inside of the group that I noticed that, a lot of organizations didn't have. And the very first market research study I did was with over 100 Black-owned business owners local to Louisville. And I asked them, I said, what are your top 3 barriers to success? How can I help you? What is it that you need? And through that study, the top 3 that we were able to identify, number 1 is the access to loan-free capital. So a lot of them, need micro grants or, small amounts of money that will help them, one, to take their business from a hustle to a legal entity, or, registration fees or marketing, all of these different costs that would help them to start a firm foundation for their business. So that was number 1, access to loan-free capital, which loans are also in there, but a little later on. Number 2 was a lack of advertisement and representation. So when I started the group, when we started to get everybody in there, it was like we didn't know we had all of this Black excellence in the community. A lot of us didn't know. We didn't know we had a Black optometrist, or all these chiropractors, all these lawyers and primary care physicians and so forth. So, it was like we have more than soul food restaurants. We have a lot of amazing professional businesses out here. So on one end, the community was like, wow, we didn't know, we had all of this out here. And then on the other hand, the professionals were like, well, we were having trouble letting them know that we are here. So it kind of bridged the gap between the two. So that was number 2. There's different organizations. All of the information is there. You can go to Small Business Association, SBDC, all of these different places and find this information. But what I found, speaking to both sides, is there's been this age-old gap between the Black community and non-Black led organizations. So with that information, we decided to move towards a nonprofit. We are a 501c3 nonprofit for the Black Business Association, and we are only addressing those top 3 barriers that they said, hey, Tanika, these are our barriers, help us out. So you can check us out at blackbusinessassociation.org. That's where you'll see what we are working on with that. We also have some other agendas that we're working on as far as supplier diversity and things of that nature. But we also have the directory at buyblacklu.com with over 200 Black-owned businesses that's listed so far inside of the directory and growing. We haven't been able to do a full launch with the directory because of COVID, but even still, with just those who know about us, our circle, our network, which runs over 34,000 social media members, is our platform. But just with our people, our highest number of views in 1 month was over 20,000. So we do pretty well in that area. The goal is just to amplify that, so that 20,000 can turn to 100,000 and, so forth. So that's where we are. We are working with a lot of you all that's on this call, a lot of great partners, and Louisville Forward has, stepped up to really help us a lot in being able to amplify and take what we're doing to the next level.
Thank you, Tanika. I'm so glad we got your voice on this call. Technology did not stump us.
Hey, Mary Ellen, this is Kendall.
Yes.
I was wondering if I could ask Tanika a couple of questions. I appreciate that needs analysis that you just provided to the group. As you're aware, the mayor signed an executive order around creating a task force that's going to identify some opportunities to utilize minority, female, disabled-owned business enterprises, especially with respect to capital spending and infrastructure spending. So as this work goes into motion, our first meeting is October 7th, but it's only an organizational meeting. But then after that, we're going to have meetings open to the public. Would you mind participating and providing those needs? Because that's where we're seeing a gap, and we need to understand what those needs are.
Right, definitely, Kendall. And I think you're part of the Buy Black Lou. Are you part of the Buy Black Lou group? I think I saw you in there before. But yes, I definitely would love to assist. I noticed that with a lot of organizations that has been the gap. So we do have the platform, we have the people, we have, the market research, and we're willing and wanting to work with, everybody who's wanting to work with us.
Excellent. I will relay these needs at our first organization meeting, but if we can do a deeper dive in that at a later meeting in October, I'd really appreciate that.
Sounds good.
Love it. Making connections across the Zoom room. Good stuff. All right. Well, we are now going to roll into the next portion of our agenda, which is new-ish. A lot of these topics that you'll hear from Eric Burnett today and then in our discussion time are the kinds of things that we, individually, collectively, one-offs, two-offs have been talking about since, COVID hit earlier this year. And what are the big economic drivers that we're dealing with? So your Economic Development Department, part of Louisville Forward, has a strategic plan. And it's based on a lot of work over the years on what are the strengths and weaknesses of Louisville's economy, and where are the areas where we should be spending more of our efforts or less of our efforts. And the Economic Development Plan, which is essentially for you and for all of this community, was updated last year, 2019. And we did use the Racial Equity Toolkit throughout the process on that to ensure that an equity lens was applied on not only the goals, but the strategies and tactics to be deployed as well. But as we got into the work of 2020, we decided it was more than fair and really required to take a special look at this. Needs fresh eyes, if you will. It obviously is impacted by the macroeconomics of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it is even more so impacted by what's going on in our macroeconomics around economic mobility issues, the lack of inclusivity in our economy. And those are the things we really want to spend more time on today and thereafter. So we're going to have a presentation from Eric Burnett, our Senior Policy Advisor here at Louisville Forward. And Eric, I know we gave you 15 minutes, but if you can kind of cut it a little bit so we have plenty of time in our discussion rooms, because after Eric presents, then we're going to break out into 4 discussion rooms to talk more about what you've heard today and what we should be doing about it going forward. So with that, take it away, Eric.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to try to share my screen. There we go. Let me see if I can. All right, hold on. We'll all get the hang of this by the end.
We actually saw it, Eric.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
All
Let me
right.
see it again.
Great. Let me see if I can get it full screen. Right. Why can't I get it? Okay. I'll just do it like this. All right, so 6 big challenges coming out of this year. So these are things that are either substantially different now than they were before, or they're just new things. So the 6 big challenges that we've identified are this K-shaped recovery. I don't know, you know, that term has gotten bandied about a lot. This chart is actually from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So it's essentially a bipartisan consensus now that we have K-shaped recovery, meaning people at the top, these industries that you see here, technology, software, those are fine. And then other industries are still absolutely not in any way fine. That also applies across income levels. So on this chart, the red line at the top is the top income bracket, the middle is the middle, and the bottom is the bottom. So basically, this is an extremely unequal recession. It's hitting people at the bottom of the income ladder very hard. It's hitting certain industries very hard. And then other people are completely fine. Their jobs have not really been affected. So that's a big challenge. Big challenge number 2 is economic racial inequity, which is something we've obviously been talking about a lot, but it's gotten renewed attention this year, rightfully so. We've known this. Many of you have seen this chart before, but in Louisville, Black people and white people earn vastly different levels at every step of the education ladder. So white people with a college degree earn $10,000 a year more than Black people with a bachelor's degree or higher. And basically, there's no reason that should be true. The other part of this that we've just started looking into is that Black people in Louisville earn less than their white counterparts in every industry. So it's not just maybe white people are in more lucrative industries more. Sometimes that happens, but even when the industries are relatively equal, the earnings are not. So again, why is this? There's really no reason for it. Big challenge number 3 is that this emergency that we've been facing, which essentially has acted like a natural disaster. So we had this temporary, very high spike in job losses, is starting to shift from that natural disaster into a longer-term recession like the Great Recession. So our unemployment rates are kind of stabilizing, but they're stabilizing at pretty, traditionally higher levels. And obviously, we still have a lot of uncertainty with COVID and what's going to happen. But a lot of these job losses that were temporary are starting to become permanent. Big challenge 4 is the work from home revolution. So this is in the best case scenario. So assuming our economy fully recovered, we would still have an enormous change in downtown working patterns because some percentage of our workforce that used to work downtown and in any other offices, some percentage of those people are going to work from home in perpetuity. They're either going to work from home all the time or they're going to work from home part of the time. And what that means for downtown is that number of people less walking around and buying food and going to shops and whatever. So it's going to be like a Great Recession hitting downtown, even if our economy fully recovers. So that's a big challenge and we need to figure out what to do with it. Big challenge number 5 is revitalizing small businesses. This recession has not only hit lower income levels harder, it's hit small businesses harder than big businesses. So you can see in Louisville, small business revenue is still down 15%. We're doing a little bit better than our regional peers in Nashville and Indianapolis. And we're doing a little bit better than the US. But small businesses are still not at all recovered. They're still hurting. And especially in certain industries like hospitality, leisure and hospitality, restaurants, hotels, and so forth. And finally, big challenge number 6 is accelerating technological transformation. So this is something, again, we've been aware of, we've been working on. We have the Future of Work initiative to try to create new areas of economic activity that in the areas that are emerging. But this is a big challenge for Louisville. We have a fairly traditional economy that's fairly heavy on manufacturing and logistics, and even a lot of our white collar jobs like Humana are vulnerable to automation. So one of the things that may come out of this is that these trends that have been coming are suddenly accelerated. So that's going to be something we need to be aware of. So we don't have answers to all of these things. We have some ideas of things we can do. We have some opportunities actually that we think we may have in some of these areas. For example, work from home revolution could allow us to maybe attract people from other cities who can now live in Louisville but work in San Francisco. Certainly on racial justice, this is a great opportunity to try to get more equity. There's a lot of energy behind that right now. We're really motivated to get that Black business ownership rate up. So there are things we can do on all of these challenges, but they're going to require a lot of people working on them. And what we need from you all is your thoughts, your suggestions, your questions, and any input you have. That's my email address and my phone number, and I'd be happy to take questions offline.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric. And if you don't mind to put your contact information over in the chat, so it'll be there for everybody. Those are 6 really large challenges. And in fact, when we reviewed this on the co-chair call a few weeks ago, we were tempted to actually add 3 or 4 more. we almost ended up with 9 or 10 categories of things that we wanted to talk about, but we've added it around and kept it in these 6 for the conversation today. And it will allow you in your breakout rooms to go obviously a lot of different directions in terms of thinking about what you think is the most important things to spend time on, and what are the strategies and tactics that we can deploy locally to really make a difference. And I'll say as we go into the breakout rooms that these challenges that you heard Eric enunciate for Louisville are in many ways our country's challenges, and they're the challenges of most of the cities in America, and certainly mid-sized middle America cities like Louisville. So we do have things that we can learn from other cities as well who are going through this. So we're going to go into 4 breakout rooms, and we've got 4 great breakout room leaders who will help facilitate the dialogue, and we'll be in the breakout rooms for about 25 minutes. We'll come back into this space around 1 o'clock. So if you want to keep an eye on your phones or your watches, about 1 o'clock. Our 4 breakout leaders today are Sharonda Greenlee, Johnetta Roberts, Jennifer Rubenstein, and Neil Cotton. So,
hey, Marielle, and I would just ask one thing in these breakout rooms, that people set some kind of time limit to whatever it is that they're talking about doing. Those kinds of things, the information that we just received that many of us have already known, I mean, you have to have some kind of time limit to address it. So it's not enough just to have an idea, but some idea of what kind of turnaround time we'd be looking at if you really were going to impact that.
that's a great point, and that goes back to that great rule about having SMART goals, which are measurable and time bound. Yeah, great point. Anything else quickly before we break out? All right, well, Lena, take us into our rooms, and thank you to the discussion leaders for taking the wheel.
of what I call an e-learning.
Okay, I think we're all convening back. I'm afraid it probably may have cut a few people off in mid-sentence. That sometimes happens when we zoom back into our space. For those of you who were leading those breakout rooms, hopefully you can capture most of it. And if you were caught in mid-sentence, please feel free to use the chat room to finish your sentence, to finish your thought, if it's not, not captured otherwise. All right, love this technology. Sometimes it's imperfect too. All right, so we're going to go to our breakout room leaders to give us a quick recap of the most important topics that you all discussed and some takeaways for the group. So with that, I kind of interloped into Sharonda's room. I'll go to you first.
Okay, hello. We had a great discussion. One of the main challenges, the one that brought up Mr. Marshall, was number 3, and making sure that we can't lose businesses while we're creating businesses, and making sure that we're helping to stabilize our most vulnerable businesses in our most vulnerable industries. Because if your current businesses are losing and try to add new, the workforce continues to shrink. Ms. Marshall, hopefully I said that correctly. He also stated there's a possible structural issue. We mentioned a lot of businesses in minority industry start out as side hustles, and how do we move that business structurally from a side hustle to more centered, as I would call it, with an actual business so they can scale. And you do that by mentorship, training, and innovation. And so how we, again, identify those minority businesses that may have started with low capital. How do we move those businesses from being a quote unquote side hustle to a mainline business that can compete for business? Susan also brought up some great information about making sure we help keep existing businesses healthy and make sure we continue. We have to find a balance of nourishing the bloodline of new businesses. And lastly, we talked about what are some of the easy wins that we could have, not necessarily easy, but what could we do now? And that is providing possibly one place like we have with the Black Biz Association, offering more links to help minority businesses be aware of what's available. GLI stated that there's a accelerator program, a minority accelerator program. So we need one location, again, that seems difficult, but it's not. Where can people go? Where do Black businesses, minority businesses trust that they can go get the information? And so if that right now is Tamika's website, then put those links so people become aware of the partnerships that are available, so that way we can get minority businesses scale up. And lastly, I mentioned the 800 initiative in Memphis, Tennessee. They have actual goals, meaning they want to put increased revenue in minority businesses by $50 million. They're looking at getting 200 minority firms that have 0 employees to at least 2 to 3 employees. So whatever goals that we have, if we can attach actual numbers to that, so that way we can show where we're leading or where we're going, then I think that would be great. So if I miss anything, let me know, Tanika, Mr. Marshall, Susan. But that was it. Number 3 was our main focus.
That's great. I think that was a wonderful recap, and we'll all be certainly looking at the Memphis 800 initiative. There are very few original ideas left, just good stolen ones. So if Memphis has something we can replicate, we'll go get it. Thank you, Sharonda. Johnetta, we'll go to you, and then Jennifer Rubenstein after that.
Very good. Well, our robust conversation revolved around living wage or American wage jobs. Where are the jobs that pay at least $15? Hopefully higher. So we focused on 2 areas. The one that is of great concern is that we have those jobs, but they're not being filled. So yes, we want to create more, but we got to fill the ones that we have. So it seems like the biggest barrier that we heavily discussed was transportation between our lower income neighborhoods and actually where the jobs are. So I look forward to seeing some more strategies come out of addressing that issue. And then we also even talked about the importance of policy. You know, there's some criminal records that really should not be presented the way that they are, you know, after a certain number of years, what type of criminal charge, so that it is not a barrier for those seeking the jobs. And we were benefited by having someone in our group from HJI and GE. So they to talk about the challenges and also hope for the future. And then the second part of our conversation, how do we create more high wage jobs? And one of the great ideas is that as companies start up, are they fully supported? Do they have incentives? Are they identifying all of the revenues possible so that the more money they take in, the more they can pay out to create those jobs? So we focused a lot on that. And then finally, another good idea is creating more housing near these job centers that are affordable, so that if folks want to live a little bit closer to the jobs, that they have that possibility. And then someone flipped that on his head and said, why not create the jobs in the West End and identify great sites for companies to set up shop and create those jobs? So again, we're all about making sure that the pockets of individuals are, you know, are well paid, and that impacts households, neighborhoods, and on into our city. So it was good.
That's awesome. Yes, high wage jobs have been just at the top of all of our economic development strategic planning for some time. And it really goes to the core of what we're fighting in Louisville's economy, which is we had a lot of lower wage jobs for a long time and didn't transition quickly enough across our entire economy like the American economy writ large did. So got a lot of things to work on there, and a lot of similar themes that cross over from some of the GLI to economy strategic planning that was occurring recently too. A lot of focus around transportation and mobility. Thank you, Johnetta. Jennifer, go to you, and then we'll finish out with Neil's group.
Sure. So we decided to focus on number 5 about supporting local businesses. That's a big surprise, isn't it? Because I'm with the Louisville Independent Business Alliance. So thanks y'all for playing along, the rest of my group. So many smart folks in there with such a variety of resources. One thing that we talked about as well is kind of fixing the foundation first of, you know, kind of what our American economy is based on and how it has grown from slavery, and how we have not really fully addressed that that division, that gap that American wealth has been built on. So kind of, you know, I think that's been a big focus of our group in general, obviously the equity lens, et cetera. So then we wanted to get into some of the specific things that we could do perhaps to, you know, continue to support local businesses, and kind of how our corporate partners can work in that area, our local government, et cetera. So we did have some specific ideas. Unfortunately, we did not get around to putting any time-bound things around our goals, but I do want to get everybody's contact information and stay in touch. But some ideas around it were considering perhaps some sort of tax break or a tax incentive for companies to purchase from local companies, from companies based in the city of Louisville or in the region. And that could happen at a state level, or that could potentially happen through the OL3. So glad to have our CPA on, who knows all about the taxing and all that good stuff. We also talked about, you know, kind of this building connections between businesses. And we do understand that there's also often a gap where there are, you know, diversity events where Black-owned businesses, et cetera, are represented, but don't really walk away with business. So there needs to be some commitment going in for when people are networking to commit to local businesses, to people of color-owned businesses, et cetera, when they're making those connections, and not just checking a box of, yes, I've met these people, et cetera. So there's also some ideas of perhaps partnering up, you know, with some of the, you know, major corporations in town to have sort of a pledge from bigger businesses about purchasing from businesses that are only here, et cetera. You know, how that might look, you know, perhaps leave a partnering with GLI or just a general community, you know, that sort of thing. The idea of having, you know, we have a kind of buy local seasons. We have Small Business Saturday, July is Independence Month. Sarah had talked about, potentially like expanding that, putting more public emphasis on that, just not just for people's personal decisions, but also for business decisions as well. We also talked about certification barriers as far as purchasing from diverse-owned businesses, the amount of paperwork, the amount of money that goes into being certified, and how, what are the alternatives to that so that folks can more easily qualify for contracts, et cetera. I'd say that about sums up, but I'm happy to have anything else from members of my group. Did I miss anything there?
Louisvillians buying local, Louisvillians buying from Louisvillians has been a theme in a lot of conversations several of us have been in. And using these platforms that we're talking about here, the associations we're talking about, is really, really a big part of that. And that's something that we could decide to come up with some kind of community initiative around. I think about Sadiq's challenge to come up with something that has a timeline. If we challenged everyone to up their local spending by X percentage and said, here's where you could go, something for us to think about. This is such a common theme of let's just look out for each other, buy from each other, and meet new people.
Quick announcement, do your holiday shopping on a website we're putting together where we'll have lots of local businesses, talking to Tanika as well, going to have a whole mix. So when you're looking for gifts, look local.
It's a good time to start thinking about that. Can't believe it's almost that time again. All right, Mr. Cotton, want to take us home here?
Well, somebody gonna take us home. I don't know if it's gonna be me.
You got it. No. Grab it.
So we had some interesting, good conversation. Just not enough time there. But I mean, there was a mention of Black and brown ownership. With the houses and the homes, but not only just owning a home, but being able to I guess to say own what goes with that home, be able to live that life, be able to meet those bills, be able to have the jobs that it takes to get to that point. I do know Nikki, and Nikki, I'm gonna let you talk about this, but as the different things we were speaking of, different goals, Nikki come up with a nice phrase, and correct me if I say it wrong, Nikki, but transformational equality, was that correct?
No, I was talking about transformational equity. And
equity. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's fine. As an anchoring ideology, philosophy, and mandate, really, for how every major entity in this region operates. So almost like a covenant that we all assent to, we being the nonprofits individually, collectively, GLI, city, major corporations, small businesses, large businesses, all commit to re-establishing the framework of our brand, who we are as a region. I think Christina eloquently talked about how critical this moment is and how pronounced Louisville is, and the debacles around race and racism, and how we can be equally as potent and effective if we're the architect for how to come out of this. I don't know that there's really many cities that we could point to that have done a great job in transforming the way they position themselves from an equity standpoint, that they are the coveted city to now come to for Black and brown people, the city that has demonstrated, incredible economic gains overall because of what they've been able to pour into the lives and make deposits into the lives of Black folk, brown folk, their businesses, et cetera, just in a year's time frame. So one of the things that we talked about, I don't know that we had, had committed acquiescence across the board, but this idea of this time next year, what 4 or 5 things can we point to that are transformationally different in this city? Because all of the major organizations, all of philanthropy, all of our nonprofit groups have all assented to this idea of transformational equity pursuant to, whatever ideals we want to include in this document. And because of that, we now can see that our economy in the area of healthcare is different and better, and education systems are different and better, and the way that we work, our workplace, our workforce is not even, it's almost unrecognizable, the number of Black people that we have on boards and in C-suite roles, and the Black businesses that we've been able to, how we've been able to see that proliferate in a year. Because we have all coalesced around these ideals that are a part of this transformational equity movement that's afoot. So we didn't come up with that, what that would look like, but we did just kind of talk conceptually about how potently, amazingly powerful that would be.
And I know in those conversations, increasing the diversity spending come up, help, you know, as far as mental, the higher standards, you know, I can't think who it was, but God, and I'm sorry, but someone mentioned, you know, being in the healthcare systems and the different ways to go through the healthcare system and the changes in the healthcare system.
Thank you guys for that report back in. And transformational equity is, I think, a beautiful term. And Nikki and Neil, I love the kind of basis you set down there. Let's pick a date, to Sadiq's point earlier, and say, let's set our goals to that point. What are those things need to look at? And I think that's where we are as a team, and where we need to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what do we want those things to be? Where do we want to set those markers as a community to make that progress over the coming year? I think that's a really powerful place for us to be.
And even with that idea, Mary Ellen and others, if we were to set clear expectations across industries, across sectors in the city that said, we expect our organizations to sign up for this. And it'd be interesting to see who would choose not to, but we have to be really aggressive in the goals that we're setting. I mean, it will feel affirmative action like, it will feel set aside like, it will feel unfair, and that's what equity ought be. So it'd be really interesting to see who's bold and courageous enough to be a part of those conversations and who's not. And then this next year, the following year after that, then we'll be able to really assess, you know, what kind of city do we want to be? Our DNA has fundamentally changed. Our core character has fundamentally changed, hopefully because of these moments. And there's just businesses that will fit into the new Louisville and some that won't. Mm-hmm. And so that would help us kind of fetter that out too.
And the other thing I think is interesting, I'm sorry, but Eric's point about Black people, even in industry, you know, in different areas, in different cities, different states, making more than those in the same line of business in Louisville, that has to be addressed. And I would challenge every company represented on this call to go back and do a pay equity study in their own company, because it would be interesting to see, first of all, what your leadership team looks like. To really, if you had to stand up and take a snapshot of your leadership team, you know, what does that do? Would you need a janitor to come stand to give you diversity? That's the first question. What does it look like? And then secondly, what are you paying people? What are they making? What does a woman make in that role? And right now the issue is race. It just is. Women are, if you raise up, if we do right by the least, then everybody else will get theirs. But the question is, are we willing to ask these questions? I think it is very interesting what we choose to decide to focus on. Not the thing we have control over. And I have to tell you, this is a frustration I have with education folks. Sometimes people don't want to give you the answer because they're so scared. If I tell you that these kids need art, you're going to take the gym teacher away. We always operate from this deficiency space, and we can't continue to do that. What in the world is going on in this city that smart Black people can't even earn the living they deserve here? That is on you. That is on me. What are you going to do about that? Some of you guys are signing the checks. I mean, anybody want to focus on that?
So, Sadiqa, this is Cornelius, and that's a great point you bring up. You know, just like women getting paid different. You know, and Eric brought it up earlier. Minorities getting paid different. See, what
He didn't say
in my
minorities. He said Black people.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Black people.
I am sorry.
B, and I'm serious about this right now because people are in the streets over this.
Hey, look, I agree. I'm serious about it too. You know, when you bring that point up, you know, I lead a local union, and I'm sure you know, and that's what we fight for. We fight. You know, we fight all the way across the board. You know, one's not gonna get treated no better than the other. I don't care who you are, a man, a woman, Black people, brown people, whatever. I mean, that's what we fight for. That's definitely what we fight for. So I understand that. And I know it's different. It's different in the other world that I'm not in anymore, I guess to say, as far as working non-union and this and that. I mean, but you know, that's something to think about too. Even with the owners and these companies out here and these businesses out here, there's plenty of companies and businesses out here that can quite be organized. They can unionize. You know, they can join unions. You know, everybody's not for a union, but the thing about it is somebody there to hold somebody accountable when you have some type of representation.
Right. And my question is really to the leaders, because some of them are involved in GLI, they're involved in this call, they're involved in all of these spaces. And it's much less burdensome to challenge yourself about somebody else's problem. But it is hard to look at your own company, your own hiring practices, your own HR. And what I would love for CEOs to recognize is that many times you come to organizations like the Urban League and you want us to partner, the CEO may want one thing and HR makes that thing a lot more difficult. And so I think that Eric Burnett, we need to all take that study and review it and think about how can we individually in the space that we're in push for change. This group is a good thing, but we won't be able to move quickly enough. There are some things you can do different that would absolutely change outcomes. And that's what I want us to see. I mean, we are better than this. And I don't think any of us I'm not saying people knew, but now that you know, you have to go and look at the place that you control.
Can I just add that my son is 19 and just came back from military and he works at Best Buy. In Indiana, they just increased minimum pay to $15 across the board. Not sure who made this decision, but it came down the pipe to increase it $15 across the board. Because of the COVID grant, I was able to add an employee and she makes $18 an hour as my assistant. And so people, to Sadiq's point, corporations can do what they want to do. Best Buy did it, Holly Lobby's doing it. There's so many different companies that are increasing pay. Now, unfortunately, these are across the bridge. But, $15 and he's 19, there's some adults that are medical assistants that are making $15 that are working at Norton's. When I worked at Norton's 5 years ago to help a friend, it was $12.60. Just 4 years ago. These medical assistants aren't making money. And so I think companies can do what they want to do if they want to look at it. And I was horrified when I saw it, that if I have a degree, even though I don't make my money in Louisville, if I have a degree, I would make $10,000 to $15,000 less than my white counterpart. That's pretty interesting. But I had to go out and create a company so I can create my own money.
And
they can do what they want to do.
And that's the thing, Sharonda, is to say, even if the job is a clerical position, if you had what do you pay the man what do you pay the white person in the clerical position? Right. What do you pay versus what you're paying this Black man or woman? That's what we need. We need that kind of pay study. And if you really look at it, some of these things, that's how deep bias goes. So
I don't need a pay study. She made my counterpart. I had a degree. She made $1 more than me.
There you go.
So, I mean, it's very critical. And I love what the city of Louisville is doing. I've lived here since 2004, but these disparities have been here for a while, and corporations can do exactly what they want to do.
This is such a relevant conversation, and it, you know, hits home to all of us in our organizations. It's something we've been dealing with in Metro. I'm proud of some of the things we've done, and I'm not proud of some of the other things we've done. And it's all about the systems. It's the systems that we're battling that got us here. So when people talk about systemic racism and institutional racism, these are the things that we're battling today. There's been some great comments over in the chat room too. I hope you've been watching those. It's hard to have 40 people all talking at one time, but please make sure you're keeping an eye on those as well. And Sadiqa, thank you for challenging us on a couple of good points today. It really, I think, helps steer the conversation to some good points for us to pick up on and move forward with, both individually and collectively.
And Mary Ellen, can I just say this, please, to everybody? I don't challenge us to be mean or to just be critical for the sake of it. I live here with my 2 children, just like you all have your families here. And I'm telling you, your city is at a tipping point. And people are not going to allow business as usual anymore. And everybody is going to have to do their part, or we will burn it down and rebuild it. But we are not, it can't go on like this. And that is not a threat, it is a promise. People are on edge. The stress is real. And I live a very good life. I ruptured my Achilles and somebody sends a car to help me. I mean, I have everything and I am enraged. So people who have no hope, who feel homeless, who are stressed, believe me, your employees are going through it right now. You need to be referring them to EAP. They don't know how to manage this level of stress. It is too much. So do your part before you are forced to, please.
That's well said. We talked a little bit about that on our leadership team meeting at Louisville Forward just this morning, the need to look out for each other. Some people want to talk, some people aren't ready to talk, but there's a lot inside right now that we each need to deal with as a community. I appreciate you bringing that up. We are actually over time, but in the best possible way, because that was really, really good dialogue. We will try to put some of these notes together, and then the co-chairs will take that and come forward with some recommendations for some next steps. Appreciate all of the good dialogue, whether it was in the rooms, in the chat, or where else, and really appreciate everybody being all in on this. I'll close out today with just kind of echoing something you said about a tipping point. This is that moment. And Louisville is at the center of this for America. And so we have an opportunity to embrace this moment and push us over into something better, or run away from it and fall back into something far worse. I'm obviously in the first category and eager to work with everybody who's eager to push that forward. And I know it's hard work. So Kendall, I see you're still on with us. Anything to add as we close out today?
No, again, I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate everyone's input. I've been taking rapid notes to take back to leadership and to take back to the task force. And I pledge to put that equity lens on everything that we do, and to take that equity pledge to ensure that everybody's paid equally for doing equal work. So thank you all very much.
All right, you all. Thank you so much for your time, your energy. Let's continue the conversation in different settings and make sure that we take what we've done today into the next step, into action. Appreciate you. Thanks for loving Louisville.